Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. It's day 2 of the public part of the COVID inquiry, and it's been sort of alleged now that the SNP's rules that they were forcing on these care homes let the people in those care homes, the residents, down so badly. They were often neglected to the point that some of them even starved to death. Just picture sort of emaciated, uncared for people in the concentration camps during the Second World War, and it would be much the same in Scotland under the SNP, but then they're very similar kinds of people. Now, of course, there's a lot more people involved. You did have the camp commandants, the guards and things like that, but ultimately, of course, it's the high command that needs to be facing the worst of the punishments, and for this we mean Nicola Sturgeon and Jean Freeman, who I think absolutely need to be facing a trial on human rights. They've broken all kind of agreements on the way human beings should be treated. And I think they need to be receiving a bit of the same medicine. They won't like it. But you know what? I would. Anyway, we'll take a look at this, see what's been going on, and see some of the claims that are being made in this section of the inquiry. Here goes. So, Nicola Sturgeon's government let care home residents down during COVID pandemic as some were neglected and left to starve. And does anyone doubt this? We saw what was happening. They were putting the untested people in. There was changes of rules. There was very strict rules. We talked yesterday about how assaults were occurring by staff members on inmates simply because they had to obey the rules. And these people aren't trained. They're not trained as guards. They're not trained as policemen. They're care home assistants, and yet they were asked to do things for which they were never prepared, never trained. It's no wonder things got so bad. Lawyers acting for COVID bereaved families urged the Scottish COVID inquiry to look at the number of pressing issues, including why the virus managed to decimate care homes despite the lockdown. It's because the care homes became breeding grounds because they were getting people and knowingly getting people with COVID and shoving them into homes filled with elderly, vulnerable people in the hope, I suspect, of, eradicating old people. It was a genocide of the old. It can be no other way of describing this. And they, I think, undoubtedly knew it. They knew what would happen. It was cynical on their part. And that's what they did because they knew that the old tended to vote unionist. Also, you can cut the pension costs, can't you? Anyway, the Scottish Government was accused of letting care home residents down. No, I don't think they let them down. I think, like I said, they deliberately targeted them. And this is on day 2 of the Scottish COVID inquiry, as questions were asked about the usage of DNRs for Do Not Resuscitates for elderly patients. It was also claimed that some elderly were neglected and left to starve. Many, and we've covered this in the past, especially through with conversations with Leslie, that many of these DNRs just appeared as if by magic. There was no conversations. People weren't asked their view. People weren't even informed on many occasions. Family members would turn up and find them there. Like, what the hell's going on? Nobody spoke to us about this. And things like that. And so they had to be, physically taken off. People didn't know. People were just being left to die or deliberately signed off for death. Think Mengele walking down the line. The train pulls in, he goes, right, you live, you live, you live, you die, 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 want you, you live, well, die, die, die. That's what's going on in the care homes and the hospitals because that's what they were dealing with. They were the Mengele of the COVID pandemic. Lord Brailsford heard evidence in Edinburgh from the Scottish COVID bereaved who want to ensure that their loved ones' deaths should not be in vain. Claire Mitchell spoke on their behalf and said that they expected answers, accountability, and where sincerely and appropriately made, apologies from those who let Scotland down. I'm afraid you're going to get none of those things. You won't get answers because they'll hide the truth, because they cannot afford the truth to come out. There'll be no accountability because nobody will ever admit that they got anything wrong, and they won't make an apology because an apology is an admittance that they did get something wrong, and they can't ever do that. And I'm afraid your requests for answers, accountability and apologies just won't happen. Anyway, she added, the use of DNRs notices is a matter of grave concern to Scottish COVID bereaved, and it is hoped that the inquiry can shed light on this. Some of the most damning evidence came from Sheila McCall KC, who was representing the Skye bereaved relatives group, with the care homes there some of the most badly hit by COVID. A total of 10 residents died during an outbreak at Home Farm Care Home in Portree alone. The case is being considered by the Crown Office due to alleged negligence from staff there, with some of the families also lodging a damages claim, which alleges that air fresheners were used as disinfectants and that there was a failure to provide some ill residents with oxygen. When you're deliberately not giving people who need medication that medication, I think you're contributing to their death. I wouldn't go as far as to say it was murder unless it was intentional, but I would definitely say manslaughter. Maybe intentional, maybe murder. Who knows? But certainly you don't use air freshener as a disinfectant, because it isn't. It just smells nice, and that, of course, is half the problem. Make it smell nice, you won't smell the death. You won't smell the decay. You won't have that bittersweet stench of rotting flesh as people are left to rot in their beds. Anyway, HC1, which ran the care home at the time, previously said that throughout the pandemic it had worked tirelessly to protect residents and staff. They're going to say that, aren't they? Ms McCall said that one thing they had in common with the other bereaved groups was that care home residents were let down by the Scottish Government, the Care Inspectorate and care home owners. And she claimed that some of the elderly patients may have been neglected and left to starve to death. And in her opening statement, she said that families wanted to know why COVID was allowed to enter care homes and spread like wildfire during the pandemic. And she added, as well as receiving the suffering of individuals and their families, we anticipate the evidence in these hearings will point to a systemic failure of the model for the delivery of care in Scotland, for its regulation and its inspection. And again, you're holding out far too much hope for what is actually going to happen, because evidence will be lost, evidence will be hidden, evidence will be denied. People will have suddenly frail memories and they will be unable to recall such events and things like that. It's not going to happen, because it is going to be a whitewash. It's not there. It's not an inquiry. And like I said yesterday, if they're not going to release all the evidence to the public domain, then you know it's not an inquiry, it's a cover-up. Anyway, he said, we anticipate the inquiry will hear that people were pressured to agree to do not resuscitate notices. People were not resuscitated, even though no such notice was in place sometimes. That residents may have been neglected and left to starve, and that families are not sure they were told the truth about their relative's death. Yeah, there is definitely cases where there was a DNR in place, relatives come and found it, removed it, and still they did not resuscitate because they just assumed that the relatives didn't mean it. Things like that. Wrong. It's completely wrong, isn't it? And these people need to be charged with each and individual, not as a corporate group death of hundreds of people, thousands of people. Each and every individual single death must be punished for. And so you get 5 years for that one, 5 years for that one, 5 years for that one, 6 years, that was a pretty bad one, 6 years for that one. And you don't do them concurrently, you do them consecutively. And if you have to spend the rest of your life in jail, so be it. Don't care. Anyway, Central Scotland Care Homes, which is a group of 12 small to medium-sized independent care homes, was represented by Alistair Gray, who pointed out that the issued guidance, which came from the government, changed frequently, and that messaging came through was often contradictory. Say it ain't so. Say that the government wasn't filled with people who didn't have a clue what they were doing. That can't be right, can it? Because they always tell us how brilliant they are. Amar Anwar, who's the main legal counsel of the Scottish COVID bereaved, said that the provision of end-of-life care and the subsequent bereavement had caused significant trauma to this group. He added that many of his members felt a sense of anger and guilt about the standard of care their loved ones received before death, and that there's some that feel their loved ones' deaths could have been prevented. Undoubtedly. We know undoubtedly that. He concluded many feel ongoing guilt and anger that they were unable to advocate for their loved ones when they most needed them. There were some care homes that absolutely banned people from going in and seeing residents, and that was never the law. But they just didn't know, and people didn't know. But actual fact, what guidance isn't law. Here's the thing. Guidance is guidance. The law is the law, and the law supersedes guidance. And the law is quite simply there about the right to human life, the right to family life. And that is part of the human rights legislation, which supersedes just about everything. So all these people go, oh, well, it's against the guidance. Don't give a shit. And people need to be aware that you can quite literally not give a shit, and they won't try this shit again because you just have the right to go in. The right to family life supersedes. Remember, European Convention on Human Rights sits atop all laws in this country. Anyway, he said the use of DNR's DNA CPR is the full name of it. No, it's a matter of grave concern to Scottish COVID bereaved, he said, and it's hoped that the inquiry can shed light on this, but I suspect it probably won't. And I will come up because it's there. It's the end of day 2. Oh, well, it's not the end of day 2. It's the latest report from day 2. There may be another one. I'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's just going to show that the advice given by the evil sociopath Nicola Sturgeon, picture of her there, that, oh, you must do this, you must do that, blah, 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 all that. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She caused suffering, needless suffering. She's caused the most excruciating, agonising deaths by starvation. She's caused families ripped apart because, you know, these families, they loved each other. Now, she wouldn't know that. She's unloved, unlovable, never loved anyone in her own life because she is a psychopath. She's quite incapable of feeling emotion for other people. She's totally soulless, isn't she? Disgusting piece of human filth that she is. Anyway, I shall stop there and come up. Now, what we're having at the moment is all these people from one side asking all these questions, and what you're not getting is any answers. None at all. No answers are coming, and no answers ever will, of course. Nicola Sturgeon will just feign off. She won't answer anything, will she? She can't. She daren't. She knows if anything even approaching the truth were to come out, she would be looking a long time in jail for crimes against humanity. Because humanity is, of course, something alien to her. She has no humanity. She has no soul. She's a golem. She's the golem of govern, isn't she? Formed from a shapeless mass of writhing disgust for humanity. I absolutely loathe that woman. And her sheer exhilaration at the thought of losing all those old people. Get the COVID in there. We'll lose all them. We'll win that union vote. We'll get rid of them. We'll save millions on the pensions. You know, that's how she thinks. There's nothing human about her, is there? Anyway, I'm not going to get angry. I refuse to get angry. I've got to try and keep dispassionate through this. I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching this. I hope it's been illuminating. There's going to be more to come. Obviously, we've got days of this yet. A lot more stuff coming from the COVID inquiry. We will cover it in full. Anyway, until next time, stay safe, stay well, and never ever trust the SNP with anything, ever, if you value your life. Bye.